All right, let's jump right into one of mythology's biggest mysteries, Medusa. Now, we all think we know her story, right? The snake-haired monster. But what if I told you the story we've all been told is, well, not the whole story? It's way more complicated and honestly, a whole lot more interesting.
So here's the big question we're going to dig into. How does someone whose name literally means guardian or protectress, someone who early myths actually describe as beautiful, how does she become the monster we all know, the one who turns people to stone with a single glance? It's a puzzle that tells us a ton about how stories and the cultures that tell them can change over time.
Okay, so on one side, you've got the Medusa that's in all the movies, the terrifying Gorgon, a total symbol of horror. But on the other side, you have the original character, a beautiful woman, a guardian. These two identities are completely at odds with each other. To figure out how one turned into the other, we have to go a little deeper.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Medusa's story? It isn't a one-off. Not at all. She's actually part of a much bigger pattern you see in ancient myths. A pattern that has everything to do with powerful female gods. So, to solve her mystery, we need to meet a few of her divine sisters, so to speak.
This brings us to a really crucial point. We have this modern idea of a goddess, maybe this gentle, nurturing, Mother Earth type figure. But the ancient world, they saw things very, very differently. Let's just lay it out, side by side. Our modern stereotype is all about that gentle, life-giving vibe. But the ancient reality, whoa, these goddesses were often violent, they were unapologetically sexual, and they were absolutely deadly. They didn't just give life, they took it away. They were the whole messy, brutal cycle of existence rolled into one. For instance, let's take Inanna from Mesopotamia. She was the goddess of sex, farming, and war, all three. Or how about Anat, a goddess from Ugaritic myth who straight up loved battle and bloodshed. And even the famous Egyptian goddess Isis. Yeah, she was a magical healer, but she was also a fierce and formidable power you did not want to cross. These were not simple, one-note characters. So this quote from Inanna, I know, it might seem pretty shocking to us today, but it shows so clearly how these cultures connected sexuality with, well, survival. This isn't just being provocative, it's a metaphor for farming. Plowing her field meant planting crops. It meant a good harvest. It meant your people got to eat for another year. It's life and death, right there. And then you have Anat. Get this, the ancient texts describe her literally wading knee-deep in blood after a battle, decorating herself with the severed heads and hands of her enemies. Yeah, there is nothing gentle about this. This is a raw, terrifying picture of a warrior goddess. And just look at Isis. When her husband Osiris is murdered and, chopped into pieces by his brother, Isis is the one who goes around and gathers all the parts. She literally puts him back together. What a powerful idea, right? And then uses her magic to create life from his dead body. She has total mastery over both life and death. Okay, so powerful, dangerous, complicated goddesses were pretty normal back then. We've established that. So, how does this help us with Medusa's monster makeover? Well, it turns out there's a kind of framework, a mythological map, if you will, that makes it all click into place. I want you to picture 3 circles, one inside the other. On the very outside edge, you have chaos. It's the unknown, the formless, and it's often associated with the feminine. Right in the middle, at the center, you've got order, structure, civilization, the known world, associated with the masculine. And that space in between? That's the really interesting part, the borderlands. It's a place of paradox, home to beings who are both god and monster. The source material calls them godsters. So here's the kicker. This isn't a static map. It actually shows movement over time. A lot of ancient myths tell the story of a journey inward, away from the chaotic, feminine power on the edge, through those messy borderlands, and toward the establishment of masculine order right at the center. Okay, now let's put it all together. We can take this map and lay it right over the story of Perseus and Medusa, and suddenly you see it in a whole new light. This isn't just an adventure story anymore, it's a story about that exact cultural shift. So, let's follow the hero's journey. Perseus, our hero from the center, from civilization, gets sent on a quest to the literal edge of the world. The gods of order, like Athena and Hermes, give him his tools. And where does he find Medusa? Not in a city. He finds her out in that chaotic borderland, far from everything. And notice how he kills her. This is key.
He can't look at her directly. The power she represents is just too much. He has to look at her through a reflection in his polished shield, an instrument of order. Then he takes her head, a symbol of that wild, untamed power, and brings it back to the world of men.
When you see it like that, the whole story changes, doesn't it? It's not just a hero slaying a monster anymore. It becomes a huge symbol for a cultural shift, the victory of a structured, patriarchal world over an older, more chaotic, female-centered power. Perseus isn't just killing a person, he's conquering an entire worldview.
And this gets right to Medusa's paradoxical heart. The ancient Greeks even had a word for this, pharmakon. It means something that is both a poison and a cure at the same time. After she died, the blood from one side of Medusa's neck was a deadly venom, but the blood from the other side could bring the dead back to life. She is the ultimate borderland creature, destruction and healing in one.
But the story doesn't stop there. In more recent years, thinkers have taken another look at this myth and have come up with one last, really powerful reinterpretation. They've recast Medusa not as a victim, not as a monster, but as something else entirely.
The feminist writer Helene Cixous connects Medusa's story to something deeply personal. She asks, what woman hasn't felt the incredible power of her own drives, her own strength, and been taught to be afraid of it, been taught to see it as something monstrous that needs to be hidden away or controlled? From this perspective, Medusa becomes a symbol for all of that repressed power. And this leads to her final, incredible idea. Maybe the story got it all wrong. Maybe Perseus and his world of order were terrified because they couldn't handle looking at her true power head-on. Cixous suggests that if we actually dare to look, you only have to look at the Medusa straight on to see her. And she's not deadly, she's beautiful, and she's laughing. And that's a final provocative thought for you. Maybe the monster was never a monster at all, but a goddess whose power we were just taught to fear.